All right, Elias. Thanks for coming on, man.
I'm excited.
Yeah, I appreciate the opportunity to sit down and talk with you.
Yeah.
I think about people that have shaped like my fishing, and you're one of the people that do come to mind because I moved to Wilmington in 2014, 15 permanently, and I had to learn a new fishery. So the opportunity to watch your videos and learn your style and your technique has really influenced how I fish. And the fact that you have such a big channel, clearly other people are also influenced by that. So thank you for the opportunity to come on and talk with me about your story and everything involved.
Cool.
So how long have you been into saltwater fishing?
I grew up in a neighborhood called Sheepshead Bay,
Mm-hmm.
New York. And I probably started fishing there when I was in my teens. I'm 35 years old now, so I'm probably on 20 years heavy saltwater fishing. It ended up being a passion of mine, by the time I got to college. And every job I ever took, I made sure it gave me flexibility to fish as much as I could. So I would probably work like the noon to 8 shift, so I could fish sunrise till 10 o'clock most days. I was also a train engineer, and that was another profession that let me fish a lot. So all my whole path in life kind of went down the fishing route, I guess. And eventually I had an opportunity to try to take it into the self-employed realm. And I never really, I just wanted to fish,
Mm-hmm.
So however I ended up fishing, I did some guiding. During that time of guiding, I was also on these platforms that were, YouTube primarily to promote guiding.
Mm-hmm.
And I guess one thing led to another that maybe that took over guiding. In time it did.
Mm-hmm.
And I think my passion for fishing eventually got me there to where I was able to continue to just fish full time. Probably year 5 now, full time.
Okay. And I think about like me as a child, I grew up with a dad who loved to fish. Like that was his way to release. Did you grow up on the water or were you near water or?
It was as I recollect as a kid, it was a bicycle ride away.
Oh, okay, cool.
So I, didn't drive until, like 16, 17, big city, you're not driving when you're 14, 15. So I'd take a bike down to the creek, the sod banks back there.
Yeah.
And, every morning or afternoon, whatever free time I had, all summer targeting striped bass and big bluefish in the creeks. And that was a very, urban environment to do it in, but it was pretty cool looking back at it. You had to watch out for old burnt down cars in the marsh that were abandoned and salvaged for insurance money, all sorts of rebarb, but it was fishy.
Yeah. Oh, they love structure.
It was a fishy place to fish still.
Is it, so these marsh systems, or bay systems, what would it be similar to that I'm used to?
So I grew up fishing Jamaica Bay, right? And Sheepshead Bay and all that stuff. I'd say kind of like New River.
Okay.
Slower currents, some depth to some of these areas, quite a bit of a development around a lot of them, and all sorts of abandoned stuff in them. So it was a pretty cool place to fish. And at times super fishy at times for sure.
Yeah. Well, when you're a kid, you have time to explore.
Yeah, that's for sure. And you don't think things are stupid. I remember just sinking into mud that, like, what's that ramp? The Brunswick River ramp here in town.
Mm-hmm.
If you've ever been on that, stepped into that mud at low tide. I mean, I feel like I did that between the ages of 15 and 18 every day.
Yeah.
Would fall into that, mostly because I was wading and
Yeah.
how far can I wade? It's a miracle I'm alive, but that was like part of that time of being okay with just pushing the limits and not even realizing it would be a limit for me in my 30s.
Yeah. Were you drawn to the kayak at an early age, or did that slowly progress into that later?
I think it was I was drawn into that. I probably got in the kayak around 21. It was probably the first time I got into a kayak. I was on a paddle kayak for 2 years. I think the accessibility of it was a big deal. that it didn't require, since I was in school or working, it didn't require too much. I didn't have to do much on my downtime to maintain and keep up with it, and it wasn't expensive. And that was definitely a big deal for me in my college years, expense for sure. So it was accessible. There's a lot of places to kayak fish, and I kind of stuck with it. And I've put a lot of time in on head boats or party boats, whatever you want to call them, charter boats, private boats. And, there's times I do like fishing from a boat, but overall I gravitate more to the experience that the kayak provides. I still think that's, to me, one of the coolest ways to fish. Mm-hmm. But I definitely put my time in on all sorts of every platform. From the land, put my time in. From the kayak, I put my time in, and from boats. So I've more or less tried to experience it all, and I still kind of go back to the kayak every time. It still seems to provide me. I like it a lot from land too. Land would also be very comparable, but the ramping up of all the extra parts when it comes to a boat, it kind of removes some of the mystique and a little bit more of the, just you versus the elements side of it. But, everyone is free to take their own, fishing. Kayak's not for everyone. Grinding from land is not for everyone, but you develop an appreciation for the time you put in to get the reward. And so I'm still stuck with the kayak for that reason.
I feel like you're one with the environment a lot more effectively than I am in my boat per se.
Yeah, I think that always, it feels like there's definitely a certain experience that can't be replicated with that kind of platform for sure.
When thinking about like your journey with the kayak, you said you were on a paddle for 2 years. What did you start off with as far as brand and model? And
I was on a Cobra Explorer. And then I ended up going to a Hobie. I think the first Hobie I owned was a 2010. It was an Outback, same kayak I'm on 12 years later.
Yeah.
I was on an Outback 12 years ago, and I'm still on an Outback. And I think they were probably one of the first pedal drive kayaks. Don't quote me on that, but probably one of the first. I'm trying to think why I ended up going to the pedal kayak. But there was probably a reason. I can't recollect exactly why I switched from paddle to pedal kayak. I'm sure it had something to do with hands-free, or maybe I had a problem with the paddle kayak. And then I've been on that platform ever since, more or less, and I really like it. Still to this day, I still think that if we're talking kayak talk, I still think the Hobie Mirage drive system is the easiest to operate physically versus the other systems, and it has the good compromise of speed versus weight. Well, rather the best compromise. I still wish it was lighter. It used to be a lot lighter. A decade ago, it was probably 10 pounds lighter, that kayak, so that makes a big difference. But I still think it's probably the best compromise for an all-around fishing platform.
So the other models that would be available today are like the Native Slayer or the Bonafide. Like why do you still think that Hobie is more your style than those would be?
I still think the number one reason is that pedal drive system. How many miles I can go without feeling back pains. I've been on the Old Town system, which is also a prop drive system. I found more pain in my lower back in the long day. It's not that I couldn't do the mileage, but no, I'd feel more fatigued the next day. The physical demand of doing like a 10-mile day, which sometimes happens, was too much. Also, a lot of the other kayaks do tend to, not all of them, but a lot of them do tend to run into the higher weight range. So I'm not as big of a fan of, trying to put that thing on my truck bed.
Yeah, so, accessibility again. Yeah.
Accessibility. And the other thing too is when it comes to the kayaks, getting it from your truck to the water can be a big deal. Because some places you got to wheel, quarter mile. Some places have miserable sand. Some places have a bulkhead. Do you want to remove your ability to access some of that stuff too? It's a big deal too.
Yeah.
It's something to keep in mind. It's not always a boat ramp or just a nice spot to put in. Some of the best fishing, you're going to have to really improvise your launch. So
you built your background with those kayak systems. At that point, had you considered guiding or?
Yeah. So when I was a train engineer, I worked the midnight shift for about 6 months. So that was probably from 10 p.m. to 6 a.m. So during that time, I started exploring the idea of guiding. So I set up a system with loaner kayaks, and I would take people out. And it was pretty cool for a little bit. Yeah. And then during that time, I think I ended up guiding 3 years. And when I realized I could make it full time, I left a pension-based job, which was probably one of the hardest decisions I've ever made in my life. But I was young enough that if I never tried it, I'd definitely regret it. So if you put me in that job now, and I probably wouldn't leave it and to make a risk now. But at that time, I took the risk, and I guided for 2 years. And during that guiding time, full-time guiding, I was working through these other platforms, just feeling them all out, and YouTube being one of them, and designing lures. We could talk about that in a minute, but designing some lures that are kind of unique, the way to fit the way I fish that might have not been available at the time. So it's playing with some stuff, yeah, for sure. And then one thing works, one thing doesn't, another thing works, another thing doesn't. And here I am.
Yeah. You so at some point in that journey, you were like, okay, I'm making money here, and I'm trying to film these videos. What was the original plan with the videos?
I think it was really just to draw in people for guiding, because it took me a long time to realize that there was a monetization aspect to YouTube videos. And yeah, I think I was just doing it kind of like to have some fun, and to also just build up my clients.
Yeah.
To show what fishing from a kayak's like. I think, there wasn't, let me think what year that probably was. Probably 2015, 2014, 16, somewhere around there. It was still like different.
Yeah.
So to do all that stuff and show it, it definitely helped build my clients. Like I was booked all summer for guiding. I would never had any open days, canceling all the time due to weather, and trying to shuffle people around. So that was not a problem at all. So YouTube definitely helped that for sure, to build that customer base. And then somewhere around, I'd say like 7 years ago, I learned that you can monetize these platforms. And it might have been at the earlier part of that anyway. Like they might have just had those monetization requirements finally filled out and figured it out. And yeah, as soon as I kind of figured out, oh, this is another avenue too, I started working more towards that as well. Yeah.
And in the beginning of making your videos, did you have the intention of it becoming a monetization, like this is going to be full time, or was it strictly like I just need to grow what I have?
It was definitely just to grow the guiding, and I would have probably thought you were crazy when you told me I could do that full time too. Like my early videos are awful. Yeah, I know that. They're unwatchable by like standards now. They're unwatchable, but I still was doing something that people wanted to see, or maybe thought was entertaining or interesting. So sometimes I don't understand why somebody watches my videos. Sometimes I have a hard time putting that together. And when I look at the older videos, I'm actually amazed I made it.
Yeah.
Like the only thing that was saving me was I was catching good fish. Like by today's, like that's it. In terms of like when I watch that stuff, rewatch it now, I'm like, wow, that is a really good fish, but that's about it.
Yeah. Well, honestly, like if I think of, I follow maybe 20 different YouTube fishermen because I enjoy it too. Mm-hmm. None of them catch the quality of fish that you do, even today. So like that, I know that is a driving factor in your channel. And what's crazy is, I've spent a little bit of time on the kayak with you. It is excruciating to sit there for 4 and 5 hours and not move. Like my back would get so stiff. People don't understand the amount of work it takes for you to get on these fish is my point.
I think I had the luck of starting it in my early 20s, so I'm broken in so that I'm not as like in shell shock. I think you put me in my early age to work for those fish. I'm just kind of used to it, that it doesn't really faze me that I'm working for those fish. Yeah, that's my take on it. I'm trying to think. I had another thought there besides working for my fish, but yeah, it's an insane amount of work to really, especially when you got to put, after about 5-6 miles, your day can get real miserable.
And that's just one day.
Yeah.
What kind of time are you putting on this kayak in a week on average, would you say?
I'd say I try to fish 3 to 4 days a week. And I would say a day can be anywhere from 4 hours to 8 hours, maybe 10 tops, but usually I don't really go over 8 hours. And yeah, so you're saying probably like 20 hours a week goes in on the kayak for sure. Depends how many nice days of weather I get, etc. That'll make a big difference. But I'd say in most trips I'm doing probably like 4 miles at least. And then the higher end trips might be 8 to 10, even up to 12.
Yeah.
So a lot of mileage.
I know we've talked a little bit, like I've gone with you. I see you have 4 and 5 water bottles just stacked up down the edge of the kayak.
Hydration's key.
Yeah, I mean, because you are sweating nonstop on a kayak, especially in the midsummer.
Yeah, those are the months that are real bad too. The summer months is hitting out, and that sun starts to really. I get home and I can't do much.
Yeah,
that's what I don't like in like July and August. Come home at 2 o'clock or 3 o'clock in the afternoon. I'm pretty much. I have to take a nap from the sun because I probably got up early, and then it's brutal.
Yeah, what kind of calories are you having to take in after a 12-mile trek on a kayak?
I can routinely take in 3,000 to 4,000 calories a day,
and still stay. What do you weigh? 175. I was gonna say 180. Yeah,
175.
Yeah. I mean, and your legs are probably about as big around as watermelons.
But yeah, no, I'm lucky on that end. It's funny. Like we talk about this. The other thought I didn't get back to is I always say there's 2 types of people that make it on these platforms. It's the people that are really passion driven about whatever they're doing. Like I follow some carpentry channels and just I follow a lot of non-fishing channels and just see like other things that I kind of were always interested in. You're either super passionate about what you're doing or you're an absolute insane narcissist. There's very little in between.
I agree with that. Yeah. And thinking about the people I do follow, I'm like,
it's one or the other.
Yeah.
They're either extremely passionate about what they're doing or they're going down the route of promoting myself gets me to my claim to making a living.
Yeah.
Just making this all about me. So like I never like the social media side of what I do. It's actually the worst side. It's the only side that I don't enjoy. I really want to just be able to be out there and fish every day if only one person watched what I did, and that would be like my dream.
Yeah.
If anyone's out there, that one person that wants this content. No, but anyway, in all seriousness, I always I just like the fishing. I'm not a social media guy. I don't like the attention, honestly. Still to this day, I really rather just be all about the fishing. And it hurts my business in the long run that I'm so not grouchy. I'm just like disinterested.
Well, you're an introvert, I would say.
Yeah. I'm just not interested in that. I'm interested in my passion. So I'm on that side of the spectrum,
Yeah.
But of the social media living spectrum that I'm more about the actual trade. And that's really what always interested me. And learning more about fishing and what I do lets me go experience new fisheries and try different fisheries and try different techniques. And that to me is always the most interesting. And then when, the whole like, how do I monetize this? How do I keep this fish out of the water for 2 minutes to get these YouTube shots and Instagram shots? Trust me, a lot of guys do it. I never take advantage of that because I'm more interested. One time a fish goes belly up, it's like, oh man, I only had it out of the water for 15 seconds, not even 10 seconds. And that fish is like, I'm like, man, I got to be even quicker. So like the amount of marketing, social media marketing I'm not capitalizing on. Oh, it's a huge thing because I care too much about the actual fishing side of things.
It shows, though. It shows that you care about, like you said, just the ability to go out and do it again tomorrow. Yeah. That's what you're about, the sustainability of it. And in 2015, when you were starting this, social media was not what it is today.
It's true.
And
I've never been trained to inherit the responsibilities I had. I feel like a lot of people are in that position that their passion might have driven them somewhere. But at the same time, they don't know what to do with the responsibility maybe they've inherited indirectly or directly. So it's like a lot of times I'm like juggling, like, what am I supposed to do with a channel of this size? I'm not even, I can't imagine somebody with, millions of subscribers that built the channel off of passion, but now has become a centerpiece and all sorts of things.
And I've learned a lot from you about that. Like, I feel like we're different in a way. Like I'm fishing I love to fish. I love it just like you do. But at the same time, mine is more like geared towards building a real estate business. Mm-hmm. And I've had to learn from you that how I fish this spot this way or film this area this way is going to forever affect the place that we fish. And I know that like you are very careful with the way that you do fish, just in the interactions that we have, because
I try my absolute best, and occasionally I might slip up, but I try my absolute best to not film and that'll negatively impact anything.
Yeah.
Like, I try to pick the biggest areas possible that it doesn't matter, at least to me. It might matter to somebody else, but like the way I look at it, like this video will not affect me going back here tomorrow. And what's interesting enough about that, it's always the spots I repeat and continually have success, because I feel like even though I put this video out there and I go back out there, I can go back out, film again. It's not like I'm trashing it. I'm constantly going back there to catch fish, but everyone has their own take on that. I try to be as respectful as I can in the kayak. I come under a philosophy of, like, I wouldn't go where I go just to chase a report.
Yeah.
I think that's insanity.
I agree.
But sometimes I overlook that. That's that could be something that happens, but I would never go to fish somewhere I'm fishing just based on my own video. I think that's not a effective way to fish. That's never how I would fish, is to look for something that I'm seeing somebody else fishing and filming and go fish there. No, I'm putting in the time looking, checking it out by land and Google Maps and whatever I'm doing to figure out my own fishing technique and spots and go for a boat ride.
Yeah.
Or whatever it is. But yeah, so that's kind of my logic on it all. But maybe I think differently too, because that's my approach to it. I just fish so much that sometimes I overlook a lot of stuff.
Yeah.
When I'm out there on the water, 4 days a week fishing the way I do, I overlook tons of details that a lot of people might, it might be important to somebody.
Yeah. Well, you transitioned into a successful YouTube channel. Had you been approached by people like such as Jigging World or Bottom Sweepers? Like, how did that progression happen?
So I'd say probably I guess the market had shifted, like the fishing industry and a lot of other industries. It switched over to targeting influencers.
Yeah.
But now we call them content creators, but whatever. So I think a lot of the brands started looking at that, and I'm very particular, and most guys are now, because every day you get an email like, rep my brand, 10% commission, whatever. It's a lot of these people that I work with now I've been working with for probably like 4 years. Jigging World I've been working with 4 years now. Bottom Sweepers I've been working with for 4 years. So a lot of these are now long-term relationships that I'm pretty loyal to. And it's not, I have no ill will against another brand that approaches me, but I'm like, well, I do value loyalty. You know, somebody I've been around with a while. Yeah, and I'm super thankful for every brand that I'm continuing to work with. So I got Jigging World I work with, Bottom Sweeper Jigs. Let's see if there's another one. There's probably a couple others, and they're probably going to be mad at me for not mentioning. But I think there's a couple other people. Old Town I have a pretty good relationship with. Kayak Company. Yeah.
The glasses. Do you have a glasses?
Glasses, yeah. Waterland Co. sunglasses. They're a newer one that I started working with now. A lot of times when I don't like the pressure, a lot of times somebody, here's a little inside tip. If you're looking at a product review on YouTube because you want to buy something, doesn't matter what it is. It's not necessarily fishing related. You have to really make sure that the person, whatever product they are, they're not being compensated for a positive review.
Yeah.
I will absolutely reject everything if they don't my terms are always no pressure for review. Yeah. If I use it, I use it, and if it works well, I'll talk about it. That's really it. So if you're risking you're risking your time and money to send me something that I might never use.
Yeah.
And I also tell them that I will I will trash this if it causes me hardship, because sometimes people send me stuff that might break or cause problems, and that ruins my day on the water. That costs me money.
A lot of money.
Yeah. So I always tell people that too. So it's like, I'm very transparent, and I try to, whatever relationships I get involved with, that's kind of my terms. So a lot of people are going to do the same thing I do, but a lot of people take as much product as possible, take as much money as possible. And so just be, careful when you're watching somebody review something. Just understand what their terms were for whatever they're reviewing.
Yeah, I'm not big enough to be in that conversation.
Yeah.
But I do work with 43-2 Fishing, and Travis is out of New Bern, and he makes killer stuff. It's all custom. He hand pours it all.
Awesome.
Yeah, so like I don't make money from him. I wouldn't even want money from him because we're friends, you know.
Right.
Like if it helps him, it helps me. We're growing.
Yeah, maybe someday, but whatever.
Yeah.
No big deal.
At some point you decided, you know what, I'm going to start making lures.
Yeah.
How did that progression happen?
Oh man, a lot of it goes back to my style of fishing, jigging, and we're talking like 8 years ago. The larger paddle tail market there wasn't that many to choose from, so this was probably the first lure I made. This is the 5.5-inch Eliasvfishing shad, mostly for stripers, and they work great for red drum, big flounder. Something that was at the time also a business decision. Oh, that'll minimize my cost a lot if I provide all my lures.
True. Yeah.
For guiding trips.
Get them at cost.
Yeah, right. Exactly. Because that was a huge expense for me because I fish soft plastics a lot for my kayak. Mm-hmm. And we had a big chopper bluefish up there that would tear up everything.
Yeah.
So plastics got real expensive real quick. So that was one of my initial goals. Like, well, how am I going to reduce costs for guiding? Oh, if I make all the lures. And that was the original vision of that was to make the lures to reduce the cost.
Okay.
And also make something that was obviously works well. I would now expand into a lot of different, I play with this stuff on my downtime. I expanded into quite a few different products. This one also, I do want to one more final promotion. Then we'll go back to talking. I hate making, this is not an infomercial and I don't want it to be. This is the Mackinac shads. Originally, this is a cool design. It's a 1.3 ounce jig head on a tight 4-inch body. Lake trout.
Oh, okay. Deep water.
Deep water, fresh water. You sink through the water column super fast, and there's not too many options to fish small profiles with heavy jig heads. Mm-hmm. And that's really the idea here. What I went with. So, I cut the jig head. I cut the plastic body, the mold, and the lead goes in further, so it's not interfering with the action, but you're getting a heavier jig head into this plastic body. And that's the whole idea with this. And it's killer for lake trout.
Okay.
Weak fish, gray trout.
That's one of your new ones, or?
No, I've had this for made this about 4 or 5 years ago now.
Okay.
And I made different sizes. I changed the molds too. I changed bait keepers and hooks. I've done some modifications, but they're one of the most popular things I make. I love fishing with these too for lake trout still and salmon and all that stuff. And over here in the Carolina coast, I like them black sea bass, jigging live bottom with a red snapper.
What would be your ideal bottom depth for that, for a 1.3?
I typically fish those, say 45 to about 70, 80 feet.
Okay.
It's typically when I'm on less than 40, I'll probably be on the 1 ounce. I'd say that 20 to 40 foot range, I'll probably be working 1 ounce. And, for around 15 feet, I could probably get away with 3 ounce, 3/8 ounce size too. Depends on the type of fish I'm targeting too.
If someone wanted to buy some of these, where can they find these products?
If you like online shopping and you want to keep it local, the Tackle Room in Morehead City is probably the biggest North Carolina sales outlet for me. That's thetackleroom.com. Otherwise, you can buy them directly from my website. Intracoastal Angler carries them. Tackle Room's the biggest online one. Eliasvfishing.com direct, and the brick and mortars we mentioned for North Carolina, and then there's all these other states. This is going to take too long to look.
Yeah.
But anyway,
well, we'll get them a website. I'll link it all down below. And so at this point, you've designed your own lures, and it's not this is not cut and dry. You're continuing to edit these and manipulate them so that you can
one more time.
Increase the fishery.
So I just finally finished the molds for these are going to be the 4.5-inch stream paddle tails. So these are the 5.5s. I went through testing these. These are the 4.5, so I have them in production now. Just a little bit smaller. Same action.
Yeah.
I also have a 7-inch one. I didn't bring any of the 7-inch ones. Striper guys, 99%. That's striper fishermen. But these should be good here for this shallow water fishery. I've caught some nice speckled trout on them in my first round of testing, and I'm sure flounder are going to be.
Oh yeah, they're going to eat them up. 4 to 6 here is like the sweet spot. I feel like. So, and the split tails.
Oh yeah, and the split tails were based off the Mackinac, so I used the same jig head. We a lot of false albacore fishing I used to do was with soft plastic lures, and it ran into the same problem. False albacore always liked really short, tight profiles, but the jig heads wouldn't be were always too heavy to fish them because you needed like an ounce and a half to rip it through. So the split tails are it's a 1 ounce jig head, same Mackinac jig head, interchangeable, and that's a 4-inch split tail body that goes on these two, come in a bunch of different colors.
I'm gonna give those a shot here shortly.
Yeah, I caught Atlantic bonito, Spanish mackerel, gray trout, obviously, flounder. A lot of that stuff works. It works really well for them.
Yeah, I'm a big fan of the split tail just because you can feel so much with it, whereas the paddle tail, you kind of feel the resistance when you pull.
Yeah, these I always like split tail bodies better for fast ripping.
Yeah.
Paddle tails, as soon as you really get trying to really overpower the speed, seems to get lost. I don't personally have as much luck on pelagic. Occasionally I'll catch something like a pelagic fish on a paddle tail, but for the most part, like all the tuna guys use straight tails or split tails when it comes to their soft plastic rigging. Okay. I believe in that too.
Yeah, I didn't know that.
Yeah, like Ron Z is a very popular lure for bluefin tuna, and it's a long straight tail, the Hoagie system too. So
okay,
yeah, so typically there'll be those longer ones. I'm sure some guys use paddle tails for tuna, but a lot of the more traditional way is the straight tail.
Okay, what do you see as your progression from where you're at now with your own tackle and the future of what you want to build or continue to build? Like what is your growth projection?
I want to make sure I still love fishing.
Yeah.
That's my biggest goal. And sometimes the whole social media side of it kills it for me. So I want to try to make sure every decision I'm making is going to make me not turn this into work. And some days it does get me down that it's kind of a sad story. You think this is automatically a dream. And for a while it was, but sometimes I want to make it not be work, that I'm still as into this as day one. And some days it definitely is. I'm still super excited, but some days it's like I have to separate that. I have to stay away from the social media side of it and build those barriers better. That I'm still into fishing and what got me here to be.
Is that related to like just the days where it's blowing a little too hard to do what you want to do? Like you just don't feel like going?
Yeah, there's a lot of days where the algorithm forces me.
Yeah.
to fish when I'd rather just rest.
And what he's saying here is the algorithm, like, because if you don't make videos you don't understand, if you're not consistent, then YouTube will punish you. Yeah. And when he says the algorithm, he's meaning like I have to be consistent. I have to put a video up a week, at least. At least, right? At least. You ideally would like two
videos a week, and if somebody else is going to do it,
yeah,
that's the thing. Like it's such a competitive platform, and it's a dream job for a lot of people. And some people are going to work their absolute hardest to make it. For sure. And there's only so many eyes out there, and so many people are fighting for the same pot of gold. I'm happy and confident at this point there's enough people that want to watch me no matter what, how often I upload, what I'm uploading. But at the same time, to make it in this big, aggressive YouTube algorithm, following their rules is also important. It's as much as I want to just be like, screw these guys, I want to make my own, whatever I want to make. This might not be the best. That might be more of my impulsive side to be versus making the best analytical business decision.
Yeah. So. Well, the time of year is tough too. Just coming out of winter, like North Carolina's not an easy fishery. Like people don't understand. Like you go 4 days a week, you may only get a couple days of decent fish.
Yeah, that's this time of year. The wind is always the biggest problem. That. If you're blown out 5 days in a row, you had no time to scout because there was nothing to scout because you could barely even scout anything out. And then you get your 1 day of weather, you're hoping you're in the right area. That's it. That's really all you can do. And that ends up being the frustrating. Like it's okay if I have a mediocre day somewhere, but I learned what's going on. I have 5 days of insanely shifty weather that's going to change everything. Mm-hmm. You have all your homework is useless.
Like the past 2 weeks, really.
Yeah, your homework's not very useful.
Yeah. And how important is it to be connected with other people around?
I'd say I think your own intuitions are probably better most of the time.
Yeah.
I always find that when I fall back on what I want to fish versus, I don't chase reports because it's not a good strategy as a fisherman. Try to fall back on my own experience all the time. But that might not be always the best move either. That's how I feel about it. It's like I'm kind of stubborn that I'm like, no, I'm not chasing report. I'm going to go fish this spot because I caught fish here once on this tide, on this moon, on this week in April, whatever it is. And sometimes that logic works out. And other times, no, I might catch nothing, of course. But yeah, I do get kind of stubborn. I don't like the idea of, I don't like that chasing report culture. So I try not to. I just look at weather. What are my fishing options based on the weather forecast? Can I fish? What 5 spots can I fit? Usually that's what 5 areas can I fish based on this wind direction or whatever. Maybe sometimes it's all wide open. I'll just pick somewhere I like to fish for the most part. But that's usually my mentality behind it. Yeah.
Are you documenting every trip?
Yes,
you are.
I still do.
Okay.
I've been documenting my fishing trips for about 15 years.
Oh, wow.
So I don't document moon phase unless it's either a full or I don't like if it's a half moon. I'm not writing that down. But if it's a full moon, a new moon, and I always document significance, like the first big red drum I catch of the year, I'll document that. So this date, moon phase, this was the first of that bite for the year. If I get into a pattern, I might not be as meticulous, but like certain significant catches every year, I document that so I know when to kind of gauge it. And if there's something, is it a moon related thing? Is it just kind of random? Or like, for example, I documented the big bluefish and I haven't found them yet either. I was like, oh, this temperature must be with this moon. And then I never got a shot at that again. But like the big red drum, I'll document when, where, what time am I catching them? It'll always help you build some confidence. You forget things, that's the thing too. I do have to look at my stuff every now and then because eventually you'll forget. You might, you fish 5 years, you might remember everything you fished 10 years, but you're going to start to slowly forget details about your significant catches that you'll just be like, I think that was April. I think the tide was high, but like sometimes the extra things are good to have and keep on a log that you really know the specifics. And then if you want to fish that seriously, you'll have that play more than likely. So I do recommend everyone keep some details about catches. Yeah, for sure.
I need to start doing that because I get asked, what water temperature do the bonito show up? And I'm like, I need to think about that. And right. I should be able to just reflect back to last year and tell you. Yeah.
I've caught them in 58.
Yeah.
And I know that because I wrote that down.
Yeah.
I was like, what's the coldest I've caught that fish? Oh, 58. That's pretty crazy. And I've caught Spanish mackerel in 62. So, a couple of details definitely, yeah. It's important always. And knowing the cutoffs of certain species, what temperature do they not like? So almost everywhere on the coast, stripers don't really like above 72. That's kind of their warmer range. Above 72, they get real weird and not into it. So it's important to keep that in mind too.
Well, Elias, thank you so much for coming on, man.
Thanks, everyone.
Yeah, I'll link everything down below. If you're not subscribed to his channel, go subscribe. If you would like to join mine, I'd love to have you. And try to put out a podcast every week. It's not always fishing oriented, but it's a lot of fun to be able to have these conversations with people. Thanks so much again for coming on, man, and I'd love to have you on again.
Hopefully I didn't say anything too incriminating.
No, you're good, man.
Good. Thanks,
All
man.
right, thanks again.